Unit 2, Science and Technology. Part 1, Listening.
Long conversations. Conversation 1. Have you heard about DNA and genetic engineering?
Sure. DNA is the shortened form for deoxyribonucleic acid. It is the hereditary material in almost all organisms. Genetic engineering is the science of altering living things by changing the information encoded in DNA.
It is said that scientists can take one or more genes from one species and put them into the DNA of another to create a transgenic organism with new characteristics.
That's true. One of the first GM plants was created at the University of California in 1986.
That's amazing! But why should we spend a huge amount of money and time in developing GM foods?
Well, GM foods are usually more productive, endurable, and resistant to herbicide. Therefore, GM foods can feed the world's growing population and can bring more economical returns to farmers.
With so many advantages, why are people protesting against GM foods in some countries?
I think that's mainly because we know little about what effect they will have in, say, 20 years. Besides, it has been discovered that some GM crops can be dangerous to other plants growing in the same area.
Oh, I see. We are not sure whether GM foods will cause serious health risks to us or not.
Actually, many developed countries do not consider GM foods to be safe. In nearly 50 countries around the world, including Australia, Japan, and all of the countries in the European Union, there are significant restrictions or bans on the production and sale of GM foods.
If so, I suggest GM foods be labeled. Thus, we can at least choose whether we will eat them or not.
I cannot agree with you more.
Write no more than 3 words to answer the following questions.
Conversation 2.
Hi, George. Do you have any plans for the weekend?
Nothing special. Maybe I will just play computer games to kill time.
Oh, I see. But it's really boring to sit before the screen for a whole day. By the way, have you heard of a new term, phubbers?
Oh, yeah. You mean the smartphone addicts?
Right. Phubbers not only refer to people who are addicted to smartphones, but also those who play a lot of iPads or laptops. You know, every day I take the subway. I see dozens of phubbers tapping away on their phones or watching soap operas on their iPads.
That's true. Even parents are sometimes too focused on playing an online game to pay any attention to their children. It gets me wondering, what kind of game can make you forget your most loved people?
That's really a depressing and prevalent sight. It seems that those smart devices are just addictive. When people get together, many of them are browsing their smartphones, tweeting, texting instead of talking to each other.
Yeah, we just cannot live without these devices.
The faster smartphones become, and the more alluring the apps are, the stronger addiction will grow. Then, what can we do about it? How can we get rid of this addiction?
Maybe we should turn these smart devices off from time to time.
Maybe you should first have an unplug weekend. Refrain yourself from using computer, smartphone, and iPad. Go for a jog. Listen to music. Read a book. Visit a friend. There are so many things we can do without those smart devices.
You're right. I should change my plan for the weekend. Shall we go hiking together?
Good idea.
Complete the following sentences by using the exact words you have heard from the conversation or your own words.
Passages. Passage 1. A new technique using artificial intelligence to read satellite images could aid efforts to eradicate global poverty by indicating where help is needed most, a team of U.S. researchers said on Thursday. The method would assist governments and charities trying to fight poverty but lacking precise and reliable information on where poor people are living and what they need, the researchers based at Stanford University in California said. Eradicating extreme poverty, measured as people living on less than $1.25 a day, by 2030 is among the Sustainable Development Goals adopted by United Nations member states last year. A team of computer scientists and satellite experts created a self-updating world map to locate poverty, said Marshall Burke, assistant professor in Stanford's Department of Earth System Science. It uses a computer algorithm that recognizes signs of poverty through a process called machine learning, a type of artificial intelligence, he said. Results of the 2-year research effort have been published in the journal Science. The system shows an image to a computer, and the computer's job is to figure out what the image is, Burke said. The computer was initially fed data from household surveys by 5 African nations: Uganda, Tanzania, Nigeria, Malawi, and Rwanda, and nighttime satellite images of the same countries. Nighttime images are a basic tool to predict poverty because a higher intensity of nightlight is associated with higher levels of development. The computer was asked to use the data to spot signs of poverty in separate sets of high-resolution daytime satellite images that contain information from poor regions that otherwise appear dark in night photos. The computer learns to find a lot of things that we think are correlated to poverty, like roads, urban areas, farmlands, and waterways, said Burke. Burke said the team plans to create a worldwide poverty map that would be publicly available online. We hope our data will be directly useful by governments around the world to more effectively target their programs, Burke said. The project improves upon the use of household surveys, which tend to sample villages randomly, he said. They are able to get only, say, 500 villages in a country as large as Tanzania, which has hundreds of thousands of villages, he said. Also, according to the World Bank, only 25 of 48 nations in sub-Saharan Africa conducted 2 household surveys or more between 1990 and 2012.
Choose the best answer from the 4 choices marked A, B, C, and D to answer the question that you have heard. Question number 1. How can artificial intelligence help to eradicate global poverty? Question number 2. According to the passage, what is the measure for extreme poverty? Question number 3. The computer was initially fed data from household surveys by 5 African nations. Which 5 nations are they? Question number 4. Why are nighttime images a basic tool to predict poverty? Question number 5. Which of the following statements is not true? Passage 2. Every schoolchild knows that the small step for a man and the giant leap for mankind are words said by Neil Armstrong during the 1969 Apollo 11 moon landing. But now, the famous astronaut has given an answer to a puzzling question. Having gone all that way, at such vast expense, why were the steps and leaps so few? Armstrong, who at 80 is still campaigning to have NASA resume its exploration of the lunar surface, said there were multiple reasons for the small footprint of that first landing, not least among them the nervousness about how well their water-cooled suits would work. We are operating in a near-perfect vacuum, with the temperature well above 200 degrees Fahrenheit, with the local gravity only 1/6 that of Earth, he explained. That combination cannot be duplicated here on Earth. We did not have any data to tell us how long the small water tank in our backpacks would use. The reply was surprising enough in itself. Perhaps more surprising still was the detail that Armstrong went into about the difficulties of exploration. First, there was the question of television coverage. Planting a fixed video camera on the moon's surface was one of Armstrong's first tasks, and NASA was very clear that thereafter, everything he and another astronaut did had to be within its range of view, which wasn't large. They wanted to be able to see, for instance, how well they were walking in those heavy and awkward outfits. Here we learn, however, that even Armstrong himself was one unable to play by the rules entirely. I admit that I deliberately left the planned working area out of TV coverage to examine and photograph the interior crater walls for more useful information, he admitted. I felt the potential gain was worth the risk. Armstrong repeated his disappointment that NASA has not been back and his frustration with those who argue there's little point, since the space frontier has already been reached. Americans have visited and examined 6 locations on Luna, varying in size from a suburban lot to a small township. That leaves more than 14 million square miles yet to explore, he said.
Complete the outline below. Write no more than 3 words for each blank. Lecture. Hello, everyone. Have you ever read Nicholas Carr's book, The Shallows: What the Internet is Doing to Our Brains? It seems that Carr launched an attack on the internet and on computers in general. In the book, Carr argues that the advent of the internet and the popularization of new communication tools trap us in a shallow culture of constant interruptions as we frantically tweet, text, and email. This in turn leaves us little time for deep reading, reflection, and serious conversation. He talks of technology rewiring the brain to convince us that the new distractions make us not just less willing, but less able to focus. You may feel worried when you hear this, but I like to ask a question. Does a cultural change like this necessarily bring a fundamental change to the brain? The critics report feeling less able to concentrate and think clearly now than they did before they started frequenting the internet. But it could simply be because they grow old. So, Carr's arguments are not very convincing. Actually, the basic plan of the brain's wiring is determined by genetic programs and biochemical interactions that do most of their work long before the child discovers Facebook and Twitter. There is simply no experimental evidence to prove that new technologies fundamentally change brain organization in a way that affects one's ability to focus. However, everyone, we may think it's reasonable to argue that the internet might make us dumber, because it is easy to see how the cognitive performance of people drop when they are distracted. Who among us is not scared to see a driver chatting on a phone and looking back at the kids while weaving through city traffic? But it does not mean that prolonged focus and deep reading mark the best way to wisdom and insight. I think we should reevaluate the nature of knowledge, wisdom, and intelligence with the modern technology today. Before the computer age, chess grandmasters used to study chess books before matches. But now they use laptops to review hundreds of games. They access the knowledge as they need it, discarding it after the match. And as a result is that today's grandmasters play the game better than their predecessors did. That is, we can have temporary access to the information when we need, and then quickly discard it as we shift our attention to other things. Thus, it may make less sense to focus on the capabilities of an individual person, but more sense to think about the individual plus the cloud of technology and information that he or she has access to at any given moment. This human-computer internet collective is more knowledgeable and arguably more intelligent than a single human being could be. In this sense, as more and more information becomes available on the internet, we become not dumber, but smarter. What's more, the internet greatly increases the scope and diversity of our knowledge and enhances the possibility to work collectively on problems. For one thing, we can share ideas, data, and resources faster and on a larger scale with the internet. For another thing, today we are more likely to collaborate in larger, more diverse teams around the world. Before the computer age, we worked mostly within our own laboratories, collaborating only with students and assistants. As to the problem of distraction, I think that's because the modern technology gives us different ways to multitask, and we may have an illusion that we can handle more information than we really can. Each time we text while we are driving and do not get into an accident, we become more convinced that we can do 2 or more things at once, when in reality, almost no one can multitask successfully, and we are at greater risk when we do so. Our capacity to learn, understand, and multitask hasn't changed with the development of technology, but our confidence in our own knowledge and abilities has. All in all, the computer and the internet are not making us stupid nor really changing our brains, but they may well be making us think we're smarter than we really are, and that is a dangerous thing.
One. Choose the best answer from the 4 choices marked A, B, C, and D to answer the question you have heard. Question number 1. What harm do the internet and the modern technology do to our brain, according to Nicholas Carr? Question number 2. According to the lecture, how may we reevaluate the nature of knowledge, wisdom, and intelligence? Question number 3. What does the speaker think of multitasking? Two. Use your notes to decide if the statements below are true or false. Write T for true or F for false. Correct the false statements. 3. Fill in the blanks to complete the notes according to the information you have heard.